I could only imagine what that would be like, because not only do you threaten their personal worldview, which for a lot of people is kind of mind shattering and life shattering, but you're also threatening their pocketbook. And that's a big deal, right? They're going to remain mute on some of the most important and salient topics in order to get paid.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's the way our world has been wired. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as the show goes on. So you were in Aries rising and Aquarian sun. That's what you were doing. You were
Yes.
You were disruptor.
Yes, totally disrupting. So at that time, I was also writing a lot for LA Yoga and Whole Life Times, and they brought me on to Reality Sandwich, like toward the last days that Pinchbeck was there, and they were kind of propping. It was like Charles Eisenstein and I were their golden children, and they're like, we really want to, give you guys a platform. And it was 2012 that I wrote this article, but it came out January of 2013, where I tackled gender reassignment surgery as seen through the lens of the 53rd gene key. And that was incorporating an integral perspective of life evolves to transcend and include every stage that came before it. So if we're chopping off our junk, then we're not transcending and including. And while I, will fight to the death for my fellow brothers and sisters' freedom to do whatever they want, is this really our kindest move? And wouldn't it just make more sense to expand our definitions instead of expecting a small group of people to jump on the pharmaceutical titty and mangle themselves in these specific ways to try to look in a way that they're never going to look?
Yeah, that was really controversial take on that part of the gene keys. Yeah. And I've had this discussion with Emily before.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And it was, what's his name? Richard Rudd. Richard Rudd. Yeah. And we both came to the conclusion that in many ways, Richard Rudd was indemnifying himself, right, by taking this position.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's okay. It's the next stage of evolution.
Right.
Let's all party.
I talked to Richard behind the scenes about it, and he was a fan of my perspective. And again, like, I'm never suggesting that my way is the right way. What I'm always trying to do is like, let's talk about it. Like, and if we can't talk about it, then we really need to talk about it and talk about it from all angles, because I was having the experience, I was living in Santa Fe at the time. There were a lot of trans people here, which were new to me. And it was like, it's odd to see like someone wearing a sequin mini skirt and a push-up bra with an Adam's apple and giant hands. And like, can we talk about that there's an adjustment here, that looks weird. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that or people need to be demonized, but if I can't say that it looks weird and I don't know how to feel about it and have a conversation, then how can we really integrate this as a human family? So that article got me in a shit ton of trouble. And this was my first experience of like being canceled and the like Twitter cancel police and all of that. So I got called into an emergency meeting. It happened to be on my birthday with the Reality Sandwich crew. And they're like, well, you need to talk about what's going on. And I said, what's going on? They're like, have you not been on Twitter? And there were just thousands of tweets like saying that, Dani Katz is a transphobic hate monger. She needs to be canceled. She needs to be fired, blah, 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 blah. So they actually had my back. And I was really, I was pleased with the way that they handled it. And it put me on thin ice with them. So very soon after that, and I'd had a similar relationship with LA Weekly where it was like I could write about whatever I want to write about whenever I want, which was, I didn't realize at the time what a great blessing that was. So early 2013, Black Lives Matter is starting to come more and more into the fold. And so I pitched a story. I said, well, let's talk about the languaging, because I can guarantee you this is going to create a lot more racism just because of the languaging, Black Lives Matter. And they were like, we can't have you creating any more trouble for us anymore. You're pretty much done here. And And they shut the door and they were like, no, there will be no critiques of Black Lives Matter. And that was pretty much kind of the end of my writing career with Reality Sandwich. And then I just, over, the next few years, I just kept getting pushed out. When I was in Santa Fe, I had a column for Santa Fe Reporter. I'm now banned for life from them. So I've been, very, very clearly pushed out of established journalism, which has me, had me doing things on podcasts with Emily, my podcast. Then when I co-wrote Plandemic 2 Indoctrination with Mickey Willis, who's been a friend of mine for years, that was like kind of the final nail in the coffin of like me having any sort of like non-alternative voice.
Right. Can we talk about Daniel Pinchbeck for a moment?
Sure.
So Daniel is a symbol of the exact same thing that I talked about 15, 20 minutes ago in our conversation, where he was raised essentially by hippies, right? He was raised by hippie lefties, and he clearly was indoctrinated or embraced or osmotically received a lot of those values. And I remember getting a copy of 2012, which I think is a really good book, by the way. And no matter what you think of Daniel Pinchbeck, I think the writing is excellent. I also think you get to see a lot of his self-indulgence in that book towards the end of the book.
Massively.
And it's kind of embarrassing, actually.
Yeah, it's cringy.
Yeah, but his quest to break his head open and the way that he writes about it is actually quite good. Now, Daniel has become almost the antithesis of the thing that he started out to do.
I know.
Right. And this is what I'm talking about. He just became incredibly mainstream. Now, I don't know if it's because he has a daughter, he's trying to protect her, or this is just the byproduct of a certain form of capitalism that has a lot of asterisks and hooks and caveats that are associated with it. But,
I think he turned before the daughter came. Like I experiencing him as doing a complete 180 into like a mind controlled handler of mine before he read.
Right. So do you think that he was really conscious of doing that, or was it because sometimes the Borg just reaches in and starts flipping switches on people and they don't even know that they're doing what they're doing? Do you think he was conscious of quote unquote handling you?
I don't think so. And again, I want to be clear, I'm guessing, because though he and I have had many exchanges, we haven't talked about this one specifically. I first saw it after, because I loved Breaking Open the Head, and I devoured every word of that. I thought it was a beautiful book. I saw Daniel speak a number of times. We shared the same social circle. I would see him at parties. I was really into him. Quetzalcoatl, I was into it until the end when he has his big like breakthrough, and I was like, ooh, it was like, put your dick in your pants, Daniel. Like, we don't need to see this.
Right. It's like you have done everything up to this point in the book to disassemble your ego. And at the end of the book, your ego is fucking so big that all you have to do is convince yourself that this beauty who's like probably way above your pay grade is your soulmate. And that's really like the end of that. That's the end of that book. And I'm like, man, you did not get it.
No, it struck me as, and I've had this because I've written a bunch of books that haven't ever been published where like, I don't know how to end them or I don't know what to do. And so my sense from just like a literary standpoint was like, he was backed into a corner and had no idea how to end his book. I'm making that up. Like those are the blanks I'm filling in. Right. But yeah, it was a pretty weak ending. And then when he kind of went cuckoo in terms of parroting the globalist narrative around climate hysteria, I just thought this doesn't line up with all of your psychedelic exploration and everything that you've claimed to know. Like this is so incongruous. It's not making sense to me. And then I'd say it was probably like around when Trump was elected, he would start to come after me really hardcore. You're not talking about the right things. Why aren't you talking about this? Why are you talking about this? And I realized like that was kind of the through line between my handlers at the time was all these men in the like yoga new age community telling me what I was supposed to be talking about and what I wasn't allowed to be talking about. And he really lined up. And that's where Mickey and I, you know, our friendship goes way, 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 way back. But Daniel took to attacking me really publicly on social media, and Mickey would have my back and come in. And then when Mickey was being attacked, like we were kind of the only ones who had each other's back when our supposedly spiritual community started getting all bigoted and hate mongering and weird. So no, I feel like Daniel, like when I watched his interview with RFK, I feel like there's so much inner angst and my guess is that he's being mind controlled and doesn't know it and doesn't understand it and has a lot of like internal conflict is my guess.
Have you ever seen the video with him and Jodorowsky?
No.
Oh, you have to watch it.
Okay.
So Daniel Pinchbeck seeks out Jodorowsky, who of course is the director of El Topo.
Right.
Is a very interesting character. And he makes this probably about a 45-minute video. And it's him, they're greeting each other, they're walking. And at one point they're outside and Daniel is smoking a cigarette. And Jodorowsky says, "Why do you smoke? You know, why are you doing that?" Right. Yeah. And so throughout the interview, Daniel is looking for some kind of confirmation from a culture hero.
Mm-hmm.
And Jodorowsky does tarot.
Right.
So he does a 3-card tarot. He only uses the major arcana. And Daniel's reading was shitty. Like it was a shitty reading. Like there were cards in there that were not, how shall we say this, based on forward momentum. Okay.
Right.
And Jodorowsky tolerates Daniel Pinchbeck in that video.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like he's going to the Pope. He's looking for the papal blessing
right.
of the Pope of alternative culture and alternative media.